Okay, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. I literally filmed this yesterday. Oh, I hate the way that looks. I literally filmed this video yesterday, and then I went to edit it today, and I think I filmed it after playing Batman Arkham Asylum on my laptop. And whenever I play that game, my laptop gets really, really hot, and like you can hear the fan whirring and stuff like that. And what I didn't realize is that meant that the entirety of the audio from the video, all it was picking up was the whirring of the fan. So yeah, doing fantastic. Where's my phone? I have a reading journal now, but I didn't start it until like the end of July, so I'm still mostly relying on Storygraph. I honestly like the way that I do things in my journal better, and I feel like it makes it easier for me to review things. So we're kind of gonna go back and forth. The first book I read in July was, oh yeah, by the way, this is a wrap-up video for July. The first time I filmed it, it was 50 minutes long. Hopefully I'll cut it down. We'll see what happens. I have to go to you all. But yeah, so the first book I read in July was Superman Dawnbreaker. Also, just so you know, I read 9 books in July. That's a lot of books. So yes, I did not post a lot of videos, but I did spend a lot of time reading, so do with that what you will. Superman Dawnbreaker is by Matt de la Pena, something like that, and it is one of the books in the DC Icon series, and I am very much so a chaotic. When series don't like technically have to be read in order, like they're like they're basically standalone novels but in the same universe, I simply won't read them in order. I'll read whatever is convenient to me. So before reading Superman Dawnbreaker, I had read Batman Nightwalker, Harley Quinn Reckoning, and Harley Quinn Ravenous. I need to know, I don't know how to find like news and information about books that are coming out. Like especially in this series, because, well, on Storygraph they don't even have the third book in the Harley Quinn section of the DC Icon series, which is Harley Quinn Redemption. Like, that's not even on Storygraph, but I know that I can check it out on my library. And then also so that came out in 2024, and I don't know what they're doing next for 2025. I'm hoping they're doing something. They have to be doing something. If they quit after Harley Quinn, I'm gonna be really upset, because you could go on forever with this. I know it's like the DC Icons and not necessarily all of them, but you could really go on forever like this, and I prefer novels over I prefer like chapter books over graphic novels, just because that I find myself more immersed when I'm reading a chapter book over a graphic novel. So I'm really, really hoping they continue this series beyond Harley Quinn. But I don't know, because I tried Googling it, and I don't know if I just don't know how to Google. If y'all got any tips, leave them in the comments below. If you found any information about the next book in the DC Icon series, or whether or not it's confirmed that it's over or what, please let me know down in the comments below. Anything like that, I would love to know. But yeah, so basically, I read Harley Quinn Reckoning, then I read Harley Quinn Ravenous, and then I was like, I can't be waiting any longer for Harley Quinn. So we're gonna start reading the other books in the series. So then I read Batman Nightwalker, and now in July I read I realized when I wrote this down, I wrote Superwoman and Superman instead of Superman. But yeah, Superman Dawnbreaker. I read that in July. I rated it 4 stars. It was just as good as Batman Nightwalker. Well, I think I rated Batman Nightwalker 3 stars, but then I gave Superman Dawnbreaker 4 stars. I remember it being really good. I don't really remember too much about it. Like, I know the main plot and stuff like that, but I can't tell you unfortunately, I didn't leave a review, so that's all I got for that. Then I read The Remaking by Clay McLeod Chapman. This one, I thought it was, ouch. I thought it was really good. I enjoyed the book. I gave it, how many stars? I gave it 3 stars, so it wasn't like amazing, groundbreaking, anything like that. I think it's really ironic because one of the last lines in the book is, "You men always try to tell our story, you men always get it wrong," but this is literally written by a man. And honestly, I feel like some of the messaging in the book actually falls a little bit flat, and I'm wondering if it is not in part because he is a man telling the story. I would love to see what this book would have looked like had it been told by a woman. I guess I should tell you what The Remaking is about, because it's not a book I've heard anyone really talking about. Basically, it goes through, I really liked, and this is one of the things I really liked about the book, is how it was structured. It's not going to be for everyone. There were people in the reviews like not liking the style, but I did, where basically it was moving from like the 70s to the 90s to the 2010s, and so like in the 70s they made I think there was like a short section that took place in the 50s, question mark. Like it's doing 20-year cycles. Essentially, in the 70s, this guy produced a movie called Don't Tread on Jessica's Grave, and then in the 90s, they made a remake that was I Still Know What You Did on Jessica's Grave, and then in the 2010s, there was a podcast referencing that talked about what happened on that set, because it's very spooky vibes. I love a good book that takes place on like the set of a like movie or whatever. So that was really fun for me. And then also like spooky elements, because you know how like a lot of like horror movies and stuff like that, like I think The Exorcist or The Poltergeist is one of those movies where it's like there's like a whole bunch of like lore behind it. And I feel like we as a society really like are really intrigued by the idea of like a haunted set or a like cursed set or whatever, and that's like kind of the vibes that you're getting from the 70s and 90s, and I like, if you're a horror fan like I am, like it was so fun reading all the references, because obviously Don't Tread on Jessica's Grave, it sounds a lot like I Spit on Your Grave. I Still Know What You Did on Jessica's Grave sounds a lot like I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. There was also some references to Scream, and the script, I think it was in the 90s, was very meta, and just like Scream was, and Kevin Williamson was even mentioned, which I thought was really neat. If you don't know, Kevin Williamson wrote Scream. Also, I am a diehard Scream fan, although I will not be watching the next movie out of solidarity with Melissa Barrera, because that firing was so unjust. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look it up. I'll leave a link in the comments below with information. If you're interested in that information, it's down there. And then, so basically, also I wanna mention that the last character we read from the perspective of is a black man, and I didn't see anything in the acknowledgments to suggest he had a sensitivity reader. I'm not saying he didn't, because I could have missed it. I could be wrong, but it looks like he might not have had a sensitivity reader, and I think I didn't notice anything. I can't tell you that, like, so basically what I'm saying is I can't tell you that the representation is up to par. I can't tell you if he did a good job portraying a black man, but just an FYI, essentially, I don't think he used a sensitivity reader. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Don't sue. But yeah, where's the part? I honestly started to get a little frustrated with the incarnations of Jessica's story too, just as Amber, the main character, had. I would have liked to explore the story Amber believed in, the truth of Jessica's story, but that's kind of the point, as we get from the last line being, you men always try to tell her story, you men always get it wrong, is just, like, I really wish I could read the version that's, like, the like actual story. Like, I think that would have been a cool element to, like, add to it, like, oh yeah, like, you men always tell our story wrong, and then here's the true story, you know what I mean? I don't know, but I thought that would have been cool, because it got really frustrating, reading each iteration and seeing how it just wasn't up to par. So that's just my opinion. Then we have The Invoice by Jonas Carlson. This one, I rate it 5 stars. I loved this book. I did talk about it a little bit in my library haul video. My review is actually really short, but basically, The Invoice is about this guy. He works part-time at a video store, and his days are kind of very, like, cyclical. They're, like, all basically, like, every single day is kind of the same. He has this routine. He follows it. He's happy, content with his life. It's not very, like, interesting. You know what I mean? And then he gets an invoice in the mail from some government agency, like, hey, you owe a shit ton of money. And so then he's like, what do you mean? And he has some trouble getting in contact with customer service, and then he does, and customer service is like, oh yeah, you have to pay. Such a good commentary there on, like, what makes a good life, how do you assign worth to a life, because he's not living a very remarkable life. There are people around him that he would think would have a better life, but their bill is less. But yeah, and so, like, it kind of, the whole invoice thing is based on, like, how good your life has been, essentially, and so it's, like, it, like, kind of touches on topics such as, like, oh, looking at other people's life from the outside and assuming you know how good their life is, and assuming just because they have all these flashy things that you don't have, that their life is better, or they're, like, or they're living a more remarkable existence, whether that means they're, like, famous, or they're, like, they just have a lot of money and they spend it, and they're going on a lot of adventures or doing a lot of cool fun things, cool fun looking things, and how that doesn't necessarily mean that person is having a good time of life, and then also just, like, it touches on ideas of, like, how life is kind of what you make it, and even if you don't have a lot, that doesn't necessarily mean that your life is, like, you can still find good even with less. You can still have a good life even with less. And I thought it was really, really cute. It's only, like, 208 pages. I highly recommend, if you haven't read it, which I haven't heard anyone talk about this. It's translated from Swedish, so that's also something to note. But yeah, it's only 208 pages, and yeah, I'm very interested in reading more from him, because he has one called The Circus, and then another one called The Room, I believe, and they both also are, like, really short and sweet books, just like The Invoice was, so I'm definitely looking forward to that and reading more from him, because he seems to have something interesting to say. And then we have It's Not Like It's a Secret by Misa Sugiura, something like that. Honestly, YA just hits different. I love YA so much. Like, for a while I was, like, firmly against YA, but some of the best books are YA. I rated this 5 stars, like, when I initially reviewed it or whatever. I think I would actually put it down at 4.5, because there's one glaring element in this that's, like, that was not good at all. But yeah. So basically this is a cute little, like, rom-com situation. Well, I don't know if I would call it a rom-com, but it's like a contemporary, there's, the big part of the book is romance. Maybe I'd call it more of, like, a dramedy, question mark? I don't know. It's been a bit since I read it, so I can't tell you for sure. But basically, this girl, she just moves to a new city, so she's going to a new school, and she befriends this girl. Her name is, what is her name? I don't know any. So the main character, her name is Sana, and then the girl that she meets, her name is Jamie. And this is LGBTQIA. It's sapphic. And so basically she meets Jamie, and they kind of have like a little bit of a romance going on, but there's like a lot of issues with that. Like Sana's mother is a little bit racist, and Sana kind of calls her mother out on this, but then there's an incident between Sana and Jamie's friends in which Sana kind of says some racist things, and so of course this causes tension between her and Jamie, and there's this whole thing, and I don't know when. I think they end up having the falling out when, I'm not going to say why. They do eventually have a falling out. I don't think it was fully related to that. I think that was like one of the reasons, but it wasn't like the main reason or whatever. And so basically, one of the cute elements within this is poetry. That is what Jamie and Sana first bond over, and then so in way of apology, Sana then sends Jamie 7 poems over the course of one like school day, because that's usually like 7 periods or whatever. So each class period she gives Jamie a note with a poem, and a lot of times she has like friends like passing it to Jamie, because Sana is not always able to do that herself, and then so basically, of course, this is the romance genre, so this poetry thing does work on Jamie, and there is a conversation where Sana, Jamie, and Jamie's friends all meet up, and Jamie's friends are like, oh yeah, we really like that poem that you picked, that showed us that you understood where you had been wrong previously, and also that you understood our struggle as Mexicans. I don't know if I mentioned that. They're Mexican. And that's like the racism that occurred. And so basically, the main character thinks to herself, oh, yeah, that was totally not the intention of that poem at all. But, oh, yeah, that does actually make a lot of sense. That totally went over my head. And the problem with this is, one of the main issues within the book is that, like, there's a lack of communication and possibly some lying, if I remember correctly. Yeah. There's a lack of communication, there's some lying, etc. And so for her to do that, and then she just kind of like goes, oh yeah, totally. That feels so wrong to me, because it's like she did not learn from the entirety of everything that went on in this book. Like, she didn't learn anything, because here she is lying again. And that just didn't sit right with me, and it also kind of brushes it under the rug. It feels like Misa didn't know how to properly address it, or she kind of forgot about it and was like, oh shoot, I have to tie this loose end up. I know that she was trying to touch on a lot of difficult and complicated topics at once, and I wonder what would have happened if she focused on less variables. And let me read you a quote from her author's note that I feel like kind of would help you understand like what her goals in writing this book was. Basically, this book is about open secrets, things that everyone knows are in the room with us, but that no one wants to talk about, like race and sexuality, ethnic pride and assimilation, and jealousy and infidelity. We avoid having conversations about these things because they are awkward and emotionally risky. We're afraid of saying the wrong thing and hurting someone, and of being judged or hurt ourselves. But if we want to move forward, if we want to make real connections, we must keep having these awkward conversations and taking these emotional risks. We have to keep opening ourselves to one another. And I think that does perfectly exemplify what this book is. However, that is a lot of complicated topics to try to fit into one YA novel. And I think it was too much, because the way that she handled that racism there was yikes. That's kind of my thoughts on that. Then I read Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. When I talked about this in the first version of this video, I started to change my opinion on this book, because I only rated it 3.75 stars, or if we're talking about what I rated it in the journal, then I rated it 4 stars, because I don't know how to do 3.75 stars in my own handwriting. But yeah, so basically, this book is, there's vampires, and it's great. Love the vibes. But basically, there are two main characters. We have Adol, and then we have Domingo. And Domingo, he's like a garbage collector, just minding his own business. And Adol is a vampire, and she is trying to get from Mexico City down to somewhere in South America. I can't remember where. But yeah, so that's like kind of the vibes. And then they end up crossing paths, and he ends up kind of like helping her with that, like helps her with that. Now, I really enjoyed this book. I like the lore of the different types of vampires, and I thought the book was very well written. I love the different POVs. I love a good book with the different POVs. And my thing is, I'm so sad because I feel like there's so much more she could do with this universe, but this is the only book that seems to take place in this universe. But I could use so many more books just from this universe alone. It was just that good. Like, it was so well developed, and there's so many different, like, there's different kinds of vampires in this world. And it was just so fascinating. Yeah. The only thing in this book that I will make you aware of is that the main guy, Domingo, is 17 in this book, whereas his love interest is 23. Now, that is gross, obviously. I am 23 now, and I wouldn't even date anyone under 21. I'm gonna be honest. If you're not of drinking age, I don't want anything to do with you. I think you're just too immature. I can't. So 17? Ew. Like, I know it's legal, but ew. Anyway, and I don't think we are, like, I don't think we're supposed to root for them, which is good. I want to say that we are not supposed to root for him, although it's for them, although I don't think it's really, like, it's not explicitly clear. Which, my issues with their relationship might just be the death of media literacy. Might just be me being illiterate, okay? We also get multiple references to people calling them kids, which didn't sit right with me because I think it reinforced the idea that Adol and Domingo weren't that different in age, which is just not the case. 23 and 17 is a huge difference. And it made it hard to remember at times that they did have a problematic age difference. I do feel it stayed true to what those types of romance typically are. There is a point in the book where Adol admits that she liked him for his vulnerability, and essentially she took advantage of that. So she does admit that, which I think is really, really good. Like, just throwing that explicitly out there, like, yes, the reason that she liked Domingo was because he was vulnerable, and she essentially took advantage of that. That is so important to note. Yeah, like, the ending, I feel like, did stay true to that idea. And I think it's a very good read. So I think I would actually bump it up to 4 stars. I think when I initially was, like, icked out by the age gap, and, like, rating it lower because of that. I think I was being illiterate, because if you actually read the book, I feel like it does address that thing, that, like, age gap situation, and the grossness of it. So that's my bad. Just, like, a little bit illiterate. It's fine. Then I read The Employees, by Olga Ravin. This is translated from Danish. I was confused. I didn't understand a damn thing. I rated it 3 stars. Like, I was very confused. It's a book about what it means to be human. It's about the hubris of the powerful and the disconnection between a company and its lowest rung employees. It's about making your work everything and thinking that's enough and realizing that it's not. That as a human you need more, is essentially what I got from the book. So I got that. But, like, what was actually happening, a lot of times I was confused. I was so confused. I didn't fully get what was happening a lot of times. I don't know if it's something to do with the translation, or if I'm just an idiot. It could also very well be that. I'll fully admit to that. But, yeah. Book is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I just didn't have it in my story graph. I didn't end up putting it in my story graph because I waited too long to like sit down and add it to my story graph, and then I was like, I can't properly review this because I had like the perfect way to review this in my mind, and then I like totally lost it. I think it's fantastic. Everyone told it was all over Book Talk. Well, it might have been on Book Talk, but it was definitely on BookTube. Like, so many people last year were telling you to read this book. They were right. Read it. It's very, very good, very well written. I am definitely really interested in reading more by R.F. Kuang. So just like in a really bad headspace at the time that I was reading it, so that also detracted from my ability to like really intellectually engage with the book. So that's my bad. And then we have Roxy by Jared Shusterman and Neal Shusterman. Now this, we have the same kind of problem. I rated it 4 stars. I actually think it is a 5-star read, because the only reason I didn't rate it 5 stars is because it didn't particularly wow me. But after reading my review, I have to disagree with that. Clearly it did wow me. I found it very impressive, etc. And the problem was I was doing better than when I was reading Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, but I still wasn't all the way okay mentally, so that I think detracted from my ability to enjoy it as much, because I just wasn't in the headspace to be trying to enjoy something, if that makes sense. But yeah, this book is very, very good. Basically, it follows 2 main characters. One is named Ivy, the other is named Isaac. They are siblings. One of them has ADHD and she's put on Adderall. That's Ivy, and then Isaac is, he gets injured, and then his grandmother gives him an opioid, to help with the pain, and then what happens is, they both get addicted to these medications. Ivy starts taking more than she should of her Adderall, and Isaac starts, taking more of the opioids, and there's the way that Neal and Jared Shusterman present this is the idea, like, they personify the drugs as well. So you have so there's Roxy for the OxyContin, and then you have Addison for the Adderall. And that was actually really fun, cause like we meet like pretty much like all the drugs, like, because there are some scenes that are like separate from Ivy and Isaac, in which Addison and Roxy are like in this like party situation, and like all the other drugs are there, and they all have names, and I had so much fun like trying to figure out which drug each character was based upon their name. There was, I think, 1 or 2 that I like never figured out, but most of them I was able to figure out, but that was like really super fun, and I think the personification of the drugs in that way made this book so much more accessible to a younger audience, in trying to understand addiction and stuff like that. Like, I don't know how to explain it, you just have to read it, and I think you absolutely should read it. Please read this book. It is so good, and it deserves all of the love. I don't know how it was received when it came out. I don't know when it came out. Let me see what the average review is. The average review is 3.92, so not terrible, and I think it did a very good job of not romanticizing the situation at all. Like, we have 13 Reasons Why that does very much so romanticize mental illness in that way, but this book does not do that at all. Neal and Jared did a fantastic job at not delving into the romanticism, and I know that tends to be hard for people not to do when talking about mental health. So that was really good. I've also never been through addiction myself. However, I haven't read anything about addiction in terms of like Adderall or anything like that, but in terms of like opioids and stuff like that, I read Empire of Pain last year, which talked a lot about the opioid crisis, and then also it talked about, like, there were some accounts in there about like what it was like being addicted to this medication and stuff like that. And I recognized some of those elements of those real life stories within this story, at least for Isaac's perspective. I can't tell you anything about the portrayal of the Adderall addiction. That's not something that I've experienced. It's not something that I've read much about. But yeah, if you read this book, Roxy, and you want to learn more about the opioid crisis, if from this you get intrigued, read Empire of Pain. Also, if you guys have any recs for any nonfiction books talking about Adderall and addiction and stuff like that, and all that stuff, please leave them in the comments below. I always love a good nonfiction. There were some on my Storygraph reading list once upon a time, and then I ended up taking them off because randomly I'll go in and I'll purge a bunch of books that I think no longer interest me or whatever. There was one because there was some referenced in Empire of Pain, and there was like one about that one that starts with a V, not Vyvanse. Valium. There was a book on there about Valium that I honestly wish I kept on my TBR because I kind of want to seek that book out now after reading Roxy, because the more I've always been super interested in addiction and how addiction occurs and like ways like how that affects people, and then like also the treatments for that and all that stuff. Like I've always been like super interested in that for whatever reason. But yeah, I think I was really impressed with this book. I thought it was a really intelligent portrayal of drug addiction and stuff like that for a younger audience. We open up knowing that either Ivy or Isaac is going to die, and I think it's important that it didn't do that because it gives you the hope of like, oh yes, it is possible to overcome addiction, but also the reality that it is dangerous. I feel like having those two like diverging sides of it is really important. Then we have the final book I read in July. I actually finished it on the 31st. I gave it 4 stars. No. It's called Ring by Koji Suzuki, something like that. Now, I'm going to pull out my journal for this one because this is the first entry that I made in my reading journal in reference to actual review. This isn't a book that I would like off the bat be like, yes, you should read this. Like, this is such a great book, read it. No. No. So some of my concerns, okay, so first of all, if you haven't heard of The Ring, it had a movie adaptation in Japan and a movie adaptation in America? English? Something. And I watched the English adaptation long time ago. I think I remember enjoying it or whatever. And so I was like, okay, I finally want to read this book or whatever. Now, the sexism and misogyny in this book, it is rampant. It is really, really bad. And there is discussions of rape in this book, and it is not handled well at all. We get told when we are introduced to a character, his name is Ryuji. He is a friend of the main character, and one of the first things we learn about him when we are introduced to him is the fact that when Ryuji and Asakuwa, the main character, first met in high school, Ryuji told Asakuwa that he had raped someone the previous night, and the main character narrated, "Naturally, I didn't do anything with this information." What do you mean naturally, sir? I need to know. I need to know, because that's not naturally to me. Naturally, I'd report it. Why aren't you? Why isn't that your naturally? But yeah, it was like rampant with sexism and misogyny, even just beyond that, because that's the start of Asakuwa and Ryuji's friendship, and then they tag team looking for figuring out like how to save their own lives, because basically what happens is Asakuwa, he watches a videotape, and then that videotape basically gives him a week to live unless he can do this charm. But the problem is the charm part is like overwritten, and so he doesn't know what the charm is, and so he shows it to Ryuji, who then is like, okay, yeah, let's figure it out. So they sleuth together or whatever, and he's just a disgusting man. Honestly, both of them are. And there is a lot of instances where Asakawa is downright rude and disrespectful to his wife, and there is no accountability for that whatsoever. Like, he doesn't even feel bad about it. It's just, it's written as if it just is. That's just the way it is. And I just, yikes. I am planning to continue this series. First of all, I thought it was a trilogy. It's not. Offended. Because despite the rampant sexism within this book, there is, like, the actual mystery itself was really, really well done. And the twist at the end where we figure, well, not the twist, but, like, at the end when we figure out, like, what the charm is, I didn't see it coming. I had absolutely no idea where it was going. And then when it said what it was, I was like, oh, because, like, once I looked back over it, like, once it was told to us, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. But, like, it wasn't super obvious. Like, it was such an obvious answer. But yeah, it just really blew me away with how it came to be with that. My only issue, like I said, my main issue with it is Ryuichi's character. There's also, like, a scene towards the end where, like, his entire characterization that we had the entire novel is thrown into question. And that didn't sit well with me. And it started to question because some girl who's known him way less time than Asakawa has known him says that the things that we know about Ryuichi aren't true, and we're just supposed to, I guess, take that at her word, I guess. When Asakawa has definitely known him a lot longer, and therefore would know better whether or not Ryuichi, like, whether or not what we know about Ryuichi is, like, true or, like, is right or whatever. So I didn't really like that, and I wish we had more time to explore his character. Like, if you're going to do that, if you're going to totally throw away his characterization at the end, you need to back that up with something, and that needs to be, like, well, first of all, just don't do that. Don't do that. But, like, if you're going to, I need more time with the character. I need more time to explore the character, and understand what was the truth of the situation. And my other issue, and so part of the reason why I'm, like, wanting to read more is, well, first of all, I want to see where he goes with the story from where it ends, because it kind of ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger. So there's that. And then also, I want to see if they make any more note of Ryuichi's character and, like, what that whole situation was. I'm gonna say I doubt it, but one can dream. But yeah, so I definitely, yeah, and there is a note of some transphobia in here. The one character in it is intersex. I don't know anything about intersex or anything like that, but I saw some reviews saying that the intersex character was misgendered. I didn't pick up on that because I actually don't know anything about intersex characters, intersex people. That's my blind spot, but note that is in there. And the treatment of women in this book is just god-awful. But I did have a fun time, so I guess there's that. But yeah, so that's the last book I read in July, and that's all I got for you. That's all I got for you in this video. I will see you guys in the next one.